Good morning, friends. My name is Reverend Juniper Meadows. I'm a tall, curly-haired woman and wearing a lot of blue and rainbow and such. It's my pleasure to serve as your settled minister here at Second Unitarian Church of Omaha. I use she, her pronouns, and today we have a special guest speaker, but more on that in just a second. I've got a couple of quick announcements. Per usual, we are an all-ages community. We encourage motion and following your heart. If you need fidget toys, we got some in the jar behind you. There's no age restriction on those, of course. So take care of yourself in this space. We got bathrooms in the narthex and downstairs. Outside is open to you. Be good to you in this time, friends. Quickly, what was I going to say, Chris? I don't get to do the announcements very often. Lords have mercy. So, yeah. Oh, goodness. Leave me preach, not give announcements. We will be celebrating Pride. I'm going to step out of the way real quick. Wait, goodness gracious, Juniper. We have a very special announcement. First, we have a friend who is going off to greater, newer things. Aaron, are you here? There he is. Aaron Burback came here, what, like 2 years ago, maybe? Has it been that long? I don't know either. It's been wild, but Aaron got involved and has been helping with the garden and on the Social Justice Committee, and I just want to take a second to acknowledge all that you've done here and all that you're going to go do. You're going to Minnesota, right? Minnesota for a new job, new opportunity, safer, better, greater. I wanted to give you a chalice and a keychain and a hug, just to say thank you so much for everything you've done here for us. Go get him. Now that I figured out what I was forgetting, thank you, Aaron. I'm going to step aside for a special announcement from Tom. Tom?
I'm doing a special plug here. In the insert in your order of service, that yellow one talks about the Pride Parade. Pride is coming up this Saturday. There's information there about how you can get to Pride. Cindy Ramsey, and Cindy is back there waving. Cindy will be meeting here at the church about 8:15 if anybody wants to carpool from the church down to the gathering area down there. Be here by about 8:15. They'll leave from 8:30. I'm going to be over at the West Roads at the Orbit station to catch the 8 o'clock bus down to the Pride Parade. It's about a half an hour ride on the bus down there. If you have a yellow t-shirt, wear it. If you need a yellow t-shirt, see Cindy because she has t-shirts to check out to you. And we will see all of you, or as many of you as can make it out. Remember, comfortable shoes, sunscreen, water. It's Nebraska, it's July, it's hot. Let's go show some pride.
Yes.
And good morning. As Juniper mentioned, we do have a special guest speaker this morning joining us by Zoom from her home in Massachusetts. Destiny Magnett is the Programs and Outreach Manager at Churches for Middle East Peace and was a primary coordinator and travel partner for a trip that I took to the Holy Land, Israel and Palestine, last November. And I would like to invite Destiny to the screen to introduce herself in more detail. Destiny.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Destiny Magnett, as Chris so kindly mentioned. I am a woman with blonde shoulder-length hair. I'm wearing blue, and I'll say a word about my Zoom background. As Chris kindly mentioned, I'm coming to you from Somerville, Massachusetts, but my Zoom background today shows the view from the Mount of Olives overlooking the old city of Jerusalem, which will be a symbolic part of the words I share in my sermon a little bit later. But I'm so grateful to be joining you. As Chris mentioned, I serve as the Programs and Outreach Manager for a nonprofit organization here in the US called Churches for Middle East Peace, which now represents more than 36 member communions and denominations, including the Unitarian Universalist Association, all coming together under this banner of dedication to pursuing a holistic, sustainable, and just peace for all the Middle East, with a particular focus on Israel and Palestine. So thank you so much for having me this morning. I am so grateful to be with you.
Thank you, Destiny. And as our first act of worship, I'd like to invite everybody to stand in the sanctuary to greet the people you see around you. Sarah will open gallery view in Zoom so our remote members can also join the conversation. Thank you, and good morning again. Juniper has agreed to light our chalice this morning, which I will introduce with these words. We light this chalice as a beacon of hope for every heart that longs for morning after a long night, for every soul that still believes in the promise of peace. We light this flame for the poets and peacemakers, for the families planting gardens and dreams, for the children learning to laugh again. This light is not the end of war, but the beginning of imagination, of what could be, of bridges built, of hands extended. Let this flame shine with the courage to speak truth and to seek justice, to listen deeply and to love fiercely across every border. May it burn as a symbol of our shared humanity and the world we still believe is possible, a world where peace is not only a dream, but a birthright. Every week, this congregation recites a shared covenant adapted from the words of James Villa Blake. Let these words inform your heads and your hearts as we commit to continuing the work we do as a congregation. Sarah, please share the slide. Love is the spirit of this church, the quest for truth, its sacrament. And this is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another believe more fully in life. And because Spanish is the second most commonly spoken language in the United States, for the sake of inclusion, we also recite our covenant in Spanish. El amor es el espíritu de nuestra iglesia, la búsqueda de la verdad, nuestro sacramento, y esto es nuestro gran acuerdo, que convivamos en paz, que busquemos la verdad en el amor, y que nos ayudemos uno al otro a creer más en la vida. And for the sake of drawing the circle wider still, I would like to invite Destiny back to the screen to recite our covenant in Arabic. Destiny, please.
الحب هو روح هذه الكنيسة، فالسعي للحقيق هو عمل مقدس. وحدها هو عهدنا الكبير أن نسعى للخير والحب معا بسلام، وأن نساعد بدون البعاد أن نؤمن بالحياة.
Thank you, Destiny. And I would like to present a short reading from Susan Abulhawa. This is from her work, Against the Loveless World. To survive by loving each other means to love our ancestors too, to know their pain, their struggles and joys. It means to love our collective memory, who we are, where we come from. Destiny's message will come later, but first you get to hear from me. This is my reflection of the trip that we took last November. Like I said earlier, I accepted an invitation to visit the Holy Land through a trip sponsored by Churches for Middle East Peace. It's, like Destiny said, it's an ecumenical organization consisting of over 30 member denominations and orders. The Unitarian Universalist Association is one of the members, along with Community of Christ, which is my other denomination that I married into. My invitation came through Community of Christ from a man whose perspective I admire and trust. I decided I had the interest and I had the means to go, so I went. In between canceled flights and a major hassle through Israeli immigration, I finally arrived on a Saturday afternoon, a day after the rest of my group. It felt then, like it still feels now in my memory 8 months on, very surreal, kind of overwhelming, and even today I'm not sure exactly where to place it in my conception of the world. I remember that first evening we were together as a group for the first time on the patio behind our hotel, right in the middle of the Muslim quarter of Old Jerusalem. I felt like I just walked into a movie set, frankly. We went around the circle and we all introduced ourselves, why we were there, and what we hoped to get out of the trip. when we'd all had a chance to speak, I remember Destiny sitting directly to my left, telling us that this trip was going to change our lives. And she wasn't wrong. Composing this reflection, the hardest part for me was not in deciding what to say, but in what to leave out. I could talk about the dual narrative tour guides who joined us, one Jewish, one Muslim, who provided their diverse perspectives on everything that's going on. I could talk about both the Israeli and the Palestinian people and organizations doing the essential work of peacemaking, conflict resolution, and yes, nonviolent resistance. And for those of you in the sanctuary, I left a display of some of their work in the coffee area in the back. Please take a look later. We could have an entire summer of services just on this topic and we wouldn't even scratch the surface. Because I was traveling with an organization that's primarily made up of mainline Christians, of course, a lot of our trip also had a focus specifically on Christian history and Christian activism in the Holy Land. One specific thing that we did periodically, whenever we stopped at a place with Christian significance, we would pull out a Bible and read a scripture that was associated with that place. We read about the birth of Jesus in the actual place where many Christians believe that Jesus was born. And whatever your theology around that story, that would definitely be a moment to remember. One of the places we visited was a garden spot in the desert, a place called En-Gedi, where I was called on to read a chapter from the book of 1 Samuel. That chapter tells the story of Saul, king of the Jews, and David, who is going to become king, who are in a fight for their lives. But they have a moment together in this garden spot, and they find a way to make peace with each other. It's a fitting theme, and I read it in the place where it's set. I'd like to give it a sense of the geography for a moment. Standing there in En-Gedi, you can look down into the valley, and there's the Dead Sea, and across that you can see into the country of Jordan. Drive a few miles to the north, and you find Qumran, the cave system where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. Turn around, drive a few miles to the south, and you find Masada Fortress, as an historic site for the Jewish people, the place where they made their last stand against the Romans after they were kicked out of Jerusalem. So, where am I going with this? This is me making a metaphor. Okay. Most of our Western conceptions of the conflict in the Middle East present us with choices like these two. We turn one way and take up arms to fight for the survival of our worldview. Or we turn the other way and retreat into our cave, preserving our ideals but no longer engaging with the world. But no, there's a third way. Rumi, the Sufi mystic, wrote once, "Out beyond right and wrong, there is a field. I will meet you there." We did have a third way, standing there in En-Gedi, turning back behind us, going into the field, or in this case, the empty desert. There was a place where the men in our travel party met with a group of Bedouins one afternoon, accepted their hospitality, and shared a meal with them. And one of the items that I brought on the coffee table back there is a handcrafted doll made by a Bedouin woman. Instead of fighting, instead of retreating, we took a moment to build community with a group of people who needed it. That is how my perspective was changed during my trip. I have one other memory of our last night together as a group. Another patio behind another hotel, this time in Jericho. City lights there are minimal, so the stars and the full moon that night were brighter than I can ever remember seeing them. In the distance were the city lights, again across the border in Jordan, and off to one side we could hear the Muslim call to prayer, to evening prayer, words that I couldn't understand, and a faith expression I didn't share. But I felt it as an expression of hope, another expression of that interdependent web of which we are all a part. Juniper.
Well, you certainly have been on a journey, Chris, one of many. We've been on a journey this morning, y'all. It's not always quite so shaky here at Second Unitarian Church of Omaha, but we do follow the spirit and follow the energy. I think perhaps there's something providential about losing the line, and we are, when we're confronting such a complicated topic. It's not so much about figuring out what we're going to do in every particular scenario, but about knowing who we're going to be when the wheels fall off. That's what we're here for, friends. Not for absolute answers, but for conviction, for values, for community, for knowing we can hold ourselves through little disasters, right? And the big ones too. But here at Second Unitarian Church of Omaha, we have a shared sacrament of altar building, where you are invited to be up and about and around this space to follow your heart and make some collective meaning with the symbols we have before us. Flowers, friends, if there is a flower that you see, either in the front or in the back, that you would like to keep for yourself or give to a neighbor, do so, friends. Stones are here as well. Stones which you may pick up and offer a burden that's weighing upon you. If you feel something on your heart that you would like to lay down, I invite you to take up a stone, to feel its weight in your palm, and when you're ready, to give that weight along with your burden back to the water, again, in the front or the back. If there's something you'd like to cast a little light on, we have candles set up, friends. If you would take a stick, give it to the fire. That fire, to the candle, we pass it around. Symbol of sharing. And if you are a younger person, perhaps get a big person to help you with the candles. Is this the new Book of Life? No. That's still, we are almost through the Book of Life. It's got a couple pages left. We're going to save it for posterity. But the Book of Life, it's where you can write whatever's on your heart. Prayer, a poem, a brief reflection. You can sign your name. You can stay anonymous. What's written in the Book of Life will be incorporated into an extemporaneous prayer of the people following altar building. And friends on Zoom, the chat box is your chat box of life. You can use it in the same way. What is written there will be shared as well. And friends, that is, oh, we also have a marker board in the back if you're feeling creative, right? This is your time, friends. Be up and about this space and make some meaning with the symbols we have before us. Oh, our share the plate recipient. Goodness gracious. Take it away, Chris. Still knocking off the rust.
Every month, Second Unitarian donates half of our offering to a local nonprofit. Our partner for July and August is Restoring Dignity. At the heart of Restoring Dignity is the belief that something can and should be done to meet the needs of Omaha's refugee community through empowerment, education, and advocacy partnerships. They provide resettled refugee families with crucial services such as home makeovers, relief programs, and language access support. Their family educators go directly into homes and teach critical skills such as home fire safety, healthy home education, and homeowners maintenance education classes. All classes are taught in the language the family speaks by an educator who is from the family's community. They provide critical housing advocacy for refugees who are struggling with substandard living conditions. Restoring Dignity's Welcome Home program is a one-of-a-kind program in the United States, and I understand that they will be here next week to present First Hour, July 13th. Social justice is the heart of our church, and every day you show up. Please do give generously to Second Unitarian Share the Plate offering to support Restoring Dignity and our church. If you're remote, you can mail checks to our building at 3012 South 119th Street, Omaha, Nebraska 68144. Put Share the Plate in the memo line, or you could click the donate button on our website, or those in the sanctuary, there's a QR code on your order of service. Please do give generously.
Breathe with me, friends. Hold a prayerful spirit, a disposition of reverence be about you and us in this space this morning. Will you join me in that spirit of prayer, spirit of life and love and all good growing things beneath the star, God of every name, no name, love ineffable, holding everything. We gather on this world which would be whole, woven together in so many ways, in chemistry and physics and biology, in culture, in politics, in relationship, too often in conflict without true cause. In the midst of all that hurts and breaks in the world, from unjust wars on Ukraine and in Gaza, and the wars inside hearts here at home, in light of frightful legislation, cruel political maneuverings, people who are so desperate. Give us hearts big enough to endure the big questions of our time. For there may not be simple, easy, discernible answers in our time. For it's not what we will do, but who we will be. May we be those brave enough, bold enough, rooted enough in love to carry on, swing low, swing high. Hear these prayers from this community, expressions of gratitude, the simple joys of life.
It is almost time for Destiny. But I do have one more reading that I'd like to share before she speaks. These words come from All About Love by Bell Hooks. Love redeems. Despite all the lovelessness that surrounds us, nothing has been able to block our longing for love, the intensity of our yearning. Like all great mysteries, we are mysteriously called to love no matter the conditions of our lives, the degree of depravity or despair. The persistence of this call gives us reason to hope. Without hope, we cannot return to love. Breaking our sense of isolation and opening up the window of opportunity, hope provides us with a reason to go forward. The transformative power of love is not fully embraced in our society because we often wrongly believe that torment and anguish are our natural condition. This assumption seems to be affirmed by the ongoing tragedy that prevails in modern society. In a world anguished by rampant destruction, fear prevails. When we love, we no longer allow our hearts to be held captive by fear. The desire to be powerful is rooted in the intensity of fear. Power gives us the illusion of having triumphed over fear, over our need for love. To return to love, to know perfect love, we surrender the will to power. We cannot know love if we remain unable to surrender our attachment to power. If any feeling of vulnerability strikes terror in our hearts, lovelessness torments. And with that, I would like to invite Destiny to the screen for her message this morning.
Good morning. I think time for Destiny is quite weighty this morning. I appreciate being with you all. It's a joy to be with you virtually. As I mentioned earlier, I am coming to you from the Boston area where I've found home these days, but I grew up just down the road in Kansas City, and I actually have a stepsister who's a recent Creighton alum, so I have some Omaha connections, and I'm grateful to be with you all this morning. And my Omaha connections, actually, as I was reflecting and preparing to speak to you this morning, don't stop with my Creighton alum stepsister. As I was thinking back to what I wanted to talk about today, the roots of the justice work that I do today, I remembered and recognized that the very first protest I ever attended was in Omaha. In 2017, a friend and I, both teenagers at the time, drove from Kansas to Omaha and marched holding signs declaring the value and beauty that immigrants brought to our communities amid the legislation that was so-called Muslim ban during the first Trump administration. Looking back on this was the first time I really deeply started to think about the ways that so much of the work of justice seeking is tied together jointly in co-liberation, co-imagination, and co-seeking of a better world. These seeds of activism, of solidarity, and of just peace building planted right here in Omaha continue to guide me today as I found a vocational call working at the intersection of religion and peace building for the Middle East alongside Churches for Middle East Peace. As I was thinking about text to guide my remarks to you all this morning, I was really inspired by this instance of protest and your theme of a summer of powerful love and all of the work I've done in the Middle East, the trips I've taken, the relationships I've built, the people I've lost. And as I was preparing, I came to realize through these words from Susan Abelhawa and Bell Hooks that it's one thing to love, and to love is a powerful thing. But perhaps even more impactful, and in many ways more challenging, is to resist lovelessness. After all, so much of our world, increasingly isolationist and angry, is pushing us away from others, curating feelings of fear and uncertainty, asking us to find those who are like us, who look like us, and speak like us, and worship like us, instead of embracing difference. And this lovelessness is threatening us at every turn. On my trips to Palestine and to Israel, resisting lovelessness is something that peace builders and activists on the ground there do almost heroically in some of the most divisive and difficult circumstances imaginable. As Chris mentioned in his reflection, and I didn't know he was going to mention Rumi. I was reading Rumi this morning, and so it was a beautiful surprise. But this is a place full of history and holiness, and also of violence and joy, and yes, of course, of love. One place in this land where this kind of love-centered resistance always feels particularly strong to me is a farm just outside of Bethlehem called the Tent of Nations. The Tent of Nations farm is owned and run by a Palestinian family called the Nassers. This family and those who love them have been through so much for the sake of this place. They've regularly faced attacks on their orchards, with trees being burned or cut down by settlers. They've faced threats also to their physical safety and often have international volunteers present to provide a protective presence to them. And finally, in a structural violence kind of way, they've been privy to a seemingly unending legal battle to prove the ownership of their land as they become increasingly isolated from other Palestinian cities in the West Bank because of the expansion and construction of settlements which are illegal under international law. These circumstances, this kind of violence pervading almost every aspect of daily life, are unimaginable for many of us here in the United States. And yet, when you go to the farm, it's a place of peace and beauty and community. And through all of this, all of these threats, the Nasser family and the Tent of Nations operate under a simple slogan, which is on a banner as you walk into the farm, into some of the gates. And the simple slogan is, "We refuse to be enemies." Or in other words, as we heard from the reading from Bell Hooks, which powerfully professes that today, despite so much lovelessness surrounding them, the Nassers have continued to be called to love through an enduring, active, and unimaginable kind of hope. This kind of hope, I think, is tied deeply and intimately to the longstanding Palestinian value of samud. Samud is an Arabic word that translates loosely to steadfastness. And for Palestinians and those who stand alongside them in solidarity, samud spreads far and wide in this land and beyond, becoming impossible to ignore as you walk this sacred ground, this place that is holy to so many and yearns to be called to justice. So much so that the lyrics of today's hymn, "We Are," actually adorn a rock as you enter the farm. I preached recently at a Unitarian Universalist church in Houston, and they chose the hymn, and I had the picture of the rock on my slide, and we hadn't spoken to each other at all. And I think it's another example of the way that the Spirit moves us, and we see these interconnections of love, of hope, and resistance tied together. And I think the question for all of us in this broken world, from Omaha to Boston to DC to Palestine and Israel and beyond, is what does it mean to resist lovelessness? I found it interesting as I was, again, preparing for this talk, reading from Susan Abel-Hawa and Bell Hooks, that this idea of lovelessness, the title of Susan Abel-Hawa's book, actually comes from a quote from James Baldwin in his novel, The Fire Next Time, a line which reads, "To be loved is to strengthen you against the loveless world." I think it's beautiful. It's not to give love, but to receive it, to feel it. And so what an incredible, generous gift each of us has the opportunity to give to those in our communities, those who we see as others and enemies, those in the world, to love them so that they are loved, they are strengthened against the pressures and violence and isolation of an increasingly loveless world. Abel-Hawa's novel borrows the quote for her title, telling the story of the life and resistance of a Palestinian woman named Nahar, who's recounting her story from within an Israeli prison. She's responding to the pain, the violence, and the suffering of her world rather than with more pain, violence, and suffering, with compassion. In addition to the aptness of this theme with the idea of powerful love, I also chose these readings as inspiration because they both speak to the urgency of intersectionality and the ways we imagine and work towards liberation. It is more important than ever before that we see the ways oppressions and liberations are connected to one another, that we see that the same companies being contracted to build a wall at our southern border are the same as the companies building a wall through Jerusalem and the West Bank. It is crucial that we see the way authoritarian regimes across the world use the same xenophobic, anti-immigrant sentiments to try to secure more of their power. Fear inspires fear. Violence begets violence. And so what is our call? What would Bell Hooks and Susan Abel-Hawa and James Baldwin and the Tent of Nations and all of the peace builders and organizers and activists call us to do? I think it's this. I think that in times such as these, we, as people who believe in justice, are called to move courageously beyond fear. Fear is stopping us from loving one another, from being generous with the way that we love others. Here I want to share again Susan Abel-Hawa's words from our first reading this morning. She says, "To survive by loving each other means to love our ancestors too, to know their pain, their struggles, and joys. It means to love our collective memory, who we are and where we come from." And so here we see that to love is not only positioned in the here and now, but across time and space. How can we connect the struggles of today to the struggles of Indigenous communities hundreds of years ago on this very soil? How can we collect our struggles today into a single collective memory with our own ancestors, whether familial or spiritual or geographic, as we expand the very meaning of what ancestor might mean to us? Who are the people and places and ideas that we come from? When I was in divinity school, I had a professor who, instead of asking us things like our name or our field of study on the first day of class, he would do something a little more unusual. And it's something I've come back to as I visit communities across the US, trying to curate a space where we aren't afraid to be vulnerable, to share a bit of ourselves in the name of resisting lovelessness. So instead of asking us these questions, he would ask us, what is the name of your mother's mother? What language did she dream in? And what was her favorite book? In an invitation to bring some of our ancestors, again, whether they're familial or spiritual or some other, into the room, I invite you to take a moment to think about these questions. What's the name of one of your ancestors 2 generations removed? What language did they dream in? What might have been their favorite book? For some of us, we might know these answers right away. For others, they may not come so easily. For some, thinking of these people might bring us great joy. And for others, these images might bring us sorrow and grief. I'll invite us, bringing these people into the space, to hold on to those emotions in a brief moment of silence. And if you get a chance at coffee hour, I wish I was with you to hear the names and stories of these ancestors, but I invite you to share it with someone at coffee hour today and what this evoked for you. Because so often acknowledging these histories, acknowledging our ancestries and lineages, opens up the space for the kind of transformative love that Bell Hooks invites us to consider. It breaks down these barriers of isolation and allows us to see new possibilities, maybe even hopeful possibilities. In Palestine, and for Palestinians living in exile around the world, hope is tied intimately to these histories of the land, of their families, of expulsion, and of empire. And so the work of peace building and coalition building is seeing how our own worldviews are tied with those of our siblings around the world. Without hope, we cannot return to love. Breaking our sense of isolation and opening up a window of opportunity, hope provides us with a reason to go forward. I think this idea was best explained back at the Tent of Nations on our recent trip by Amal Nasser, a member of the family who owns the farm, who was generous enough to share their story and to give us a tour of the land that has meant so much to them. As we sat around a table at the end of our trip, the space was opened for final questions, and a member of our group asked Amal, "What does hope mean to you?" She thought for a moment, considering the weight of the question in the midst of so much violence, both structural and direct. And then she replied very simply, "If I learned that tomorrow was the end of the world, I would go to my garden and plant an olive tree." I don't know about all of you, but there have been some days lately where despair has crept in and the end of the world has not seemed as implausible and far away as I would like it to. We live in times where so many of our justice-centered values feel like they're under attack. Lovelessness is prevailing at every turn. In our own communities, we see threats to the livelihoods of our queer and trans community members, deportations of our immigrant neighbors, rising tides of anti-Muslim, anti-Jewish, and xenophobic hatred, and polarization at levels that feel unprecedented. In the world, our headlines are overtaken with descriptions of natural disasters, of pain and suffering, of endless unjust wars. And of course, I could not give this sermon today without mentioning the horrors in Gaza, where dozens of people are being killed every day as they try desperately to seek needed humanitarian assistance. As of yesterday, the United Nations reported that there have been 57,012 Palestinians killed in Gaza in the aftermath of the horrors of October 7th, where 1,168 Israelis were killed. The number of Palestinians in Gaza, many suggest, are grossly underestimated, as they don't yet include those who are still under the rubble. In every talk and sermon and forum I've given over the past 2 years, I have also shared in sharing these figures that empathy, despite what people tell us, empathy is not a finite resource. We are called to mourn every one of these lives taken too soon. And I believe too that the work of resisting lovelessness means that each of us carries a responsibility to bear witness to these horrors, to not look away, to stand in solidarity with those facing grave injustices in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Israel, in Iran, just as we ought to stand with all people facing marginalization, oppression, and violence across the world, even here in our own communities. And this is because, in the words of activist and organizer Fannie Lou Hamer, nobody's free until everybody's free. Especially on the heels of Friday's Independence Day festivities, a complicated ritual, to say the least, in the midst of these trying times, our communities now more than ever need to plant our own kinds of olive trees, with roots that move beyond our own borders, across artificial lines of division, where the powers that be want us more divided. We must answer with unity. It's time to challenge ourselves to resist lovelessness by building bridges, by having conversations, even and perhaps especially when it makes us uncomfortable, or we feel that we are putting something of ourselves at risk. It's time to challenge ourselves to, as bell hooks and stills, prove that torment and anguish are not our natural condition, and that we will not let fear and power triumph. Instead, let us love. When the world is filled with darkness, let us be love's light. When despair threatens to overtake us, let us remember love's hope. When hatred threatens to divide us, let love remind us that we are one. When violence descends, let love move us away from vengeance. When fear threatens our neighbors, let us act courageously in loving solidarity. When silence is easy, let our love compel us to speak louder. And when all feels lost, let love redeem us. Thank you.
Thank you, Destiny. I thought, in response to that wonderful sermon, you deserve at least one answer to your question. My mother's mother was Adelaide Saibenga. She dreamed and she sang lullabies in Frisian as the daughter of a Dutch immigrant. So that's my answer, Destiny. And she mentioned Tenton Nations. I want to call out one of the books that's back there in our coffee area is from that farm that she mentioned. So
I'll invite Sarah to share our chalice extinguishing words, friends. Well, if you know them.
I do not have them.
That's okay. It's one of those Sundays, friends. Roll with the tides. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Prophetic Church, this world awaits your liberating ministry. As we go from this place, may we be fools for love and pilgrims for justice, and until we meet again, may we rock, roll, and move towards that spirit of beloved community on the horizon here and everywhere. Go in peace.